Welcome to West Country Wanderings. Today you join me at Nare Head on the Roseland Peninsula. And the reason we're here today is to walk along the southwest coast path at the Roseland, or on the Roseland should I say, and we're opposite Falmouth Bay. We'll have a look at that in a moment. And we're looking at some relics from the Second World War and also from the Cold War here today. And we're having a look to see what we can find, and I'll tell you about the history of this really fascinating and interesting site here on the Roseland. So I'm on the top of Nare Head at the moment, and I'll put a map up so you've got a good idea where we are in Cornwall. So I'm on the south coast of Cornwall, so we're looking across the English Channel out there. There's a few ships out there. We have very fine scenery here at Nare Head, and looking across the water there, the inlet, is the village of Porthscatho. What you're looking at the moment is the remains, or the top section, of an ROC underground nuclear war shelter. This was the Royal Ordnance Corps monitoring station here at Nare Head. And we believe it was built around the early 1960s, perhaps 1962. The shelter is still here. There is actually a support group for the ROC, and they do have open days. Obviously his padlet, there's no way I can get into it, but it's a monitoring site, and you can see the top part of there. There was also an air ventilation shaft there as well. And this would have been used for, many of these sites were dotted around the country. They would have been used in case of a nuclear war to monitor radiation levels. This one, I believe, was closed in 1991, shortly after the collapse of USSR and the end of the Cold War. The reason I'm here today isn't actually to tell you about the ROC nuclear bunker. It's to tell you about something that happened here just about 20 years before that, during the Second World War. And it has a very interesting background. There are very little remains left of it, but we're going to have explored, see what we can find here. When I started recording, when I was doing the introduction, I was actually at one of the bunkers that was used for this site. And I'd like to tell you a little bit more about what's happened here, because it is absolutely fascinating, and links to a little piece I did on the exploration at Little Dartmouth Farm. Now we're looking towards Falmouth Bay. In the far distance there, you can just make out a tip there. It's not great conditions today, unfortunately, but it has just stopped raining. That's actually Nare Point. Now, Nare Point and Nare Head share a common history. They're both promontories which guard the entrance to Falmouth Bay. And Falmouth, just like Dartmouth and Plymouth, was an important naval base during the Second World War. And because of that, it was vulnerable to attack from the Luftwaffe. The war robbed me of my youth. They were the best days of my life. People were so much more friendlier then. We all pulled together. Some of the diverse comments of people's experiences of the Second World War in Cornwall. Everybody that lived throughout the Second World War would have had a very, very different experience. Every individual had their own stories to tell, and these would have varied widely. Some people would have experienced an increased community experience, where other people would have experienced personal tragedy through family members being killed, or wartime famine. For months we watched a change coming over the face of the Helford. Where there was once a green field, a wide concrete road appeared leading to Treba and Polgwydden. Stretching out into the river was a piece of timber and iron construction. No longer was there a clear view of this once peaceful river. Our quiet estuary was being mobilised for war, the Second Front. So what was going on here? why was Cornwall suddenly going to become a front in the Second World War? After all, it wasn't on the strategic south coast around the ports around Southampton and Dover, and you may think it may have been considered a bit of a backwater compared to other strategic sites. Well, as I mentioned, the ports at Dartmouth, Falmouth and Plymouth were strategic sites for bombing raids from the Luftwaffe. And the Luftwaffe used extensive and detailed area maps to do those locations and to work out strategies to see which areas they could destroy of all the military and naval sites. Because of the important element of the Navy here, a plan was formulated to devise a decoy mechanism. Now, I've mentioned this before when we were at Little Dartmouth Farm, and there was one used there as well, very similar to this one, although this one was a lot more extensive. These decoy sites were known as QL, and obviously we're here at Nare Head, and in the background is the one at Nare Point, though their histories are rather similar. They were built to replicate urban areas, and under the army and naval programmes covered a range of military and civilian targets. How did they do this? Well, they used a lighting system to be rigged up so that from the air it looked like it was a town. So if you're in a bombing aircraft looking down at the ground, this area would have been lit up, whereas the real town in Falmouth would have been in blackout conditions. They actually used Ealing Studios at both these sites to use special effects to make the aerial views from aircraft appear more realistic. From the air at night, on the opposite side of me at Nare Point, the above view was to make it look like it was Falmouth Docks railway system. Now, Falmouth Docks in those days had an extensive railway dockyard. Some of the lines are still extant, and it was of strategic importance. So the military authorities here in the UK wanted to protect that, so they devised a decoy by using one at Nare Point to simulate the one at Falmouth Docks. When bombers were detected approaching an aircraft, the lights would be switched according to the spotlights and using red and green bulbs on long poles. Then they would observe poorly screened roof lights and buildings, which were in fact only boxes containing more light bulbs. When they began to drop their bombs, they would see lights from doors quickly opening and shutting. This effect was created by pairs of tall, rigid frames covered in black felt, painted white on the inside. All effects were controlled by the control centre in a concrete bunker, which is what you saw at the start of this vlog. This was not the end of the deception though. If highly explosive bombs were dropped, then one or more of the bomb sets were then recreated. These were 50-gallon barrels of tar which had almost completely submerged in the ground with flashbags or detonators in the bottom. These flashbags were wired up to the control centre. The last time that the Nare Point site behind me was activated was in May 1944, when Falmouth suffered its last and probably worst air raid of all the war. The West Britain report of the time read, "This was the first time raiders had been over our shores to bomb during the moonlight period for about 3 months. At this time, those on site at Nare would have seen the waters at Falmouth Bay active, with the vessels massing for D-Day, when deception became even more important. Other decoy sites were built to protect embarkation points on the upper reaches of the Fell, including Frenchman's Creek on the Helford. We're currently looking across towards Cairn Beach, which has the extensive white building there of Nare Hotel, obviously named after this headland here. To the left of that we have another beach called Pendower, and if I've got chance I will go and have a look at those later, because one of those, I think it's Cairn, has recently had some fossilised trees exposed, so we will go and have a look at that later. The Roseland Peninsula is one of my favourite parts of Cornwall. It's much quieter than the honeypots of St Ives, Perranporth, Bude, etc. on the north coast with all the surfing. Obviously the sea here is not suitable for surfing because it's very flat. We're on the English Channel side. And it is an area that a lot of tourists don't actually explore in detail. They may go to St Mauls, but a lot of the other parts of it don't tend to get explored that well. In fact, I've not actually been to Nare Head before. This is the first time for me. I actually was reading a magazine called the Old Cornwall magazine, it's part of the Old Cornwall Society, and I saw an article about this and I was struck by the similarity to the bit I did at Little Dartmouth, and I thought it would make an interesting vlog. I'm now walking towards Cairn Beach, and I'm at Malmarney Point with Nare Head, I've just come from, just in the background behind me there. And we're going to have a look, see if we can see any of the fossilised remains on the beach. Here inside this small dwelling house, and you can see the original chimney here. The brickwork is obviously original. The soil that wattle and daub has been placed on top has been there to protect the walls above it. I don't know anything about this particular site. I haven't seen it on the history of this area. If anybody knows, please drop a comment below. Now on Cairn Beach, looking for the fossilised tree stumps if we can find them. But interesting, before we do that, we're having a look at the interesting rock pools around here. Still searching for the fossilised trees, haven't found anything as yet, but I have come across some very, very interesting geology behind me. It looks like there's been some erosion here recently, and it looks like what I can only describe as a geology layer cake. It's been sliced through and you can see all the rock formations. I'm not expert on the rocks in this area. If I can find some more information, I will drop it on a subtitle below. But in the meantime, I'll let you have a look and see what you think. Now here algae is formed on the rock and it's growing vividly. It's almost like a phosphorescent colour. At the top there, it does look like there are some iron deposits. I don't think there was any mining in this area, and I think that is just a naturally cut cave underneath. We'll go and have a look. Yes, it's too shallow to have been any proper mining. Duck. In the background is Nare Head, where we were earlier, and the site of the Second World War decoy point. And change in rock levels here. You can see the harder black rock at the base, and I'll try and find out what that is. The crumblier, almost slaty type rock, oh, it is actually slate here, you can see the levels. And then above that we have more sediment there, which presumably would have been on the base of the sea when the sea level was higher. And again, it changes as you work your way up. Try and see if there's anything above to do with the trees, because that looks like a likely spot, and it looks like due to erosion it's been cleared recently. We're now on a ledge high above the beach. I've just scrambled up. It's a bit hair-raising because the rocks are quite slippy. But I think I found where the fossilised trees would be. It certainly looks like carbon, ancient carbon matter. I'm not an expert, but I know there are fossilised remains in this site, and I think this is the location, so we'll have a look. This is the cliff above the beach. And I'll show you where we are in a second. So coming around, there's going back towards Nare Point. This over there is actually Pendara Beach. The two join at a lower tide, but the tide is coming in at the moment. There is the rock pool over there, and there's back towards Nare Head. Now I'm having to watch my footing, so apologise for any slightly shaky camera work. So I've just come up this ledge here, and I think this has been exposed fairly recently, obviously at high tide. We've got spring tides at the moment. It is coming right up, but here over on the rocks over there are some interesting patterns. We'll go and have a look at that in a moment. But here I've found fascinating with these indentations in the rock here, and this material is very dark, very carbon-like. I don't know if you can see that there. It's very, very different to the slate and the sandstone and the granite. And there's the edge of it running along there. So it is a set platform or section of the rock. And that could be where the trees were. Definitely more evidence in this area. Let's see if I can get up above that. Again, here you'll see evidence of more black carbon, which would indicate a forest or wood in this particular area many years ago. You can see here that the old carbon material from the trees is obviously a lot softer than the rock around it, because of the porous holes which are starting to form in it by erosion. Now there's more evidence, fossilised root matter here. For example, this piece, perhaps this here was a tree root, just coming down to that section there, and there's some more just over in that area, and I'll try and get that as close as I can. In there as well you can see what looks like fossilised roots of trees, and on different layers as well, where the trees would have died, decomposed and then turned into rock.
Now just moved a mile inland to the village of Varian, so let's go and have an explore.
I hope you enjoyed that little tour of Varian here on the Roseland Peninsula, and the history of the Second World War at Nare Head, just 1 mile from here. That's it for today. Look forward to seeing you all again soon. If you'd like to consider a like, subscribe, comment or share, really appreciate it. Until next time, look after yourselves, take care and see you all soon. Cheers, bye bye.